What are you going to do there,
Well,
Kathy?
we're going to do some painting. I try and do every demo slightly different so people can learn different techniques of the different mediums. This is on Bockingford, which I have pre-stamped with, I think I've done all of them, or maybe one's missing. And we've used the Versacraft. We sold out of the sets, or the set in the previous show, but we've got actually Leonie's colours that she's got on her show, so we're sort of cross-pollinating.
And it's a really good one, Seb, because it has got black as well in that one.
Yes, this has got black in this combo, and actually they're really, I love this colour set. But I mean, the reason we use them, as I've said before, is that they're permanent on fabric, although we're using them on paper. And the best thing about using on fabric, as the same as the technique I'm going to show here, is that you can stamp with them and then spritz with them until they're heat set. You can manoeuvre them around with water.
So that's fabulous. So it gets the best of both worlds.
Exactly, yeah. So I've got my rhino here. What I've done is I've stamped, spritzed with water, and then I've re-registered with a slightly deeper colour. So I don't know if you can look here at the horn. Can you see there's like a paler where I've misjudged it? Doesn't matter. So the first colour would have been like the lilac, which is, I think, it's the wisteria, which we've sold out of. But then I've spritzed it, then I've gone over the top, and I think I spritzed it again, so it intensified the depth. And the same, there's an orange under this one, but then I've gone on top with the brick. And that's why you can sometimes sort of see slightly furry edge rather than a really crisp edge, and I really like that. It sort of offers a bit of sort of atmosphere to it. But I'm going to show how we do that technique.
And of course, if you do it more than once, and every animal it has got that, it looks like you decided to do it. It wasn't a mistake. It's just.
Yeah, and by putting colour on top of colour, if you start with a pale and then get deeper and deeper, the top coat, I mean, you could almost sort of have your top coat in black, so it frames all the third colour underneath. Now, this technique only really works well when you've got a new ink pad. When it starts getting drier and you haven't got enough pigment in there, it bleeds less. So if you do it and you think, well, it hasn't worked, that'll be the reason why. So I'm just going to do one just off the side here.
And of course you are using Bockingford card.
It's quality watercolour paper, hot pressed, made in the UK, so it's low air miles and no air miles. Which is something that we if we can, we try and source in the UK. Our stamps are made in the UK. That's what we try and do. So there we've got our rhino. I'll just take this off the tile, and then what I'm going to do is spritz, and you can see how it starts to spider. And the more water you add, the further your spread will come. So you could keep it quite light and not much will happen, but it's starting to go, or you can just add more water. But I'm just going to leave that at the side to do its thing while we start working on some colour here.
So now, you do not apply a heat gun at this moment?
No, because I want it to spread.
And of course, if you heat it, then
it won't spread. So say I'd stamped it in the wisteria and I didn't want this technique, I would immediately go in my heat gun. Well, I mean, I've even pressed this one actually with an iron because I wanted it to be slightly flatter. But you could then go in with your watercolours, but it has to be heat sealed, because until you've heat sealed it, the pigment will still run. And that's exactly the same with fabric. Now I'm going to put my palette up there, and I'm actually going to work on the flat because it's easier to get the Versacraft on there, and I'm going to start working with this one, so I hope we can see it. Let's move that a little bit.
I'm all ears.
Yes, so what I'm going to do, I've got these colours from Leonie's, and these are quite, these are new, so they're quite juicy as well.
I got a Versacraft for years ago, and we were talking about that with Leonie. It's just like, it's one of those ink pens that until you started using them, I completely had forgotten them.
Yes, well, and also we don't always know what each one does, do we? You know, there's different things with different, like Leonie was saying about glues. She's not always sure about what glue to use, but there are glues for everything. Same with stamping inks.
Yeah, I love that.
So what I'm doing is I'm actually mixing a little bit of black with the peony purple. I love this purple.
So of course, by having the black, it's really good because you can create shades of all the
Exactly.
colours.
Yeah. So now this is how I would then. I'd work on this as a whole piece. You know, I'd work on the buffalo, but I'd work all the way round, just adding more and more colour.
Ah. And of course, if you wanted to keep those bleeds in here,
Yes.
and then level, you would hit set before you
Yes.
do this
Yeah.
step?
So if I go on now, say I go on, you see this is all spidered along here. If I hadn't heat set that and I put my ink then, I'd move that all out of the way. And actually, I want to keep it because it's really quite
beautiful,
pretty. Yeah. It just sort of adds texture and movement. And I apply my pigment like that, and then I go in with, it's got clean water on a brush, and then I draw it out, and that's how you go from dark to pale. And this is also how good quality, you can tell good quality paper, because it doesn't pill, and you've got plenty of time to be working on this. But my colour isn't just going to be, at the moment I'm doing like the negative shapes, but I'm actually going to bring that colour onto, actually just change my brush. I think I've got a bit of glue on that one. So
and
I'm
of
just
course
going
the card is hot press, which it means that this is smooth, doesn't it?
It's got a very, very smooth surface. I mean, most watercolour paper has got like a little bit of a tooth to it. Well, this hasn't. It's very, very flat and is very, it's very like condensed. So your pigment is almost sort of like sitting on the surface rather than being absorbed. It's so lovely to work on, and we've had lots of people who we've told about it, who have said, oh, they weren't sure, but once they've tried, they say there's no going back. And now Phil Martin uses it, Julia uses it, loads of people.
Yeah, they do. At one of the trade shows, precisely the one that you were, the pictures were from, but I'm talking about years ago. I was on a stand opposite to the manufacturers of Buckingham.
Yes. So
yeah, and the other day I finally got my watercolor paper stash bag, and original because I had it somewhere. And I found some Buckingham card, and I was so happy. It's like,
Well, I mean, we must be very sad, Mel and I, because we're actually going on a day to, people do.
That's exciting.
Yeah, because it's really important to us where our things come from. It's like us using the recycling. We don't always want to import stuff. We want to try and do, if we can do low mileage, we can. And so we need to know, and we also know with the Bockingford that where it's milled in the UK, they take the water out of the river to process their paper, and then they clean the water out and put it back in the water, and then there's trout back in the water. So I'm just redefining the eyes here. When you do this spritzing technique, quite often you lose the eyes, but you can always pop them in. And if you're not sure, if you think, well, I can't see where they are, just refer back to your packaging and you'll be able to see. And the same with like the nostrils, you see, we can...
Okay, now I have to, go full on here. There is no way on earth that I could do those eyes like you have done them. So would I be okay to restamp like just ink the eyes and then place them on top?
Exactly. And so you can, I would like to hopefully do that in a bit, is when you go back on, you don't have to go back on and restamp the whole lot. You can just define a few little areas.
There is no way that well, you are the artist that hand-drawn these images, then they convert it into stamps. So they are, if you're like me, that you are in love with the artwork, but you know that you can never replicate anything like that. Well, you don't have to. You have got the beautiful stamps. So
we've got a bit of shade in.
Yeah. Do you prefer to use regular brushes rather than water brushes then? This is how I was taught, and I don't really. I always think brushes are very much sort of personal things, just like glue. It's what you've and do people use scalpels or scissors? I've been using scalpels since I was little, and I do tend to use a scalpel, and I think brushes are just the same. Yeah. I noticed that you have got a tissue paper in one hand. Why do you have it like that?
Can you see? It's got bits of colour on. When I pick my I know how much water's on there, and if I think I've got too much, I just do a little dab, and can you see, it just takes a little bit of the moisture off, and so I know that I haven't got too much. You can always put more on, but once you've applied it, well, you can take it off. I mean, you can apply and think, oh, I've got too much, and you can just dab it off.
And that, by the way, answers one of the questions of our director. He was asking about if you put too much water.
Yeah, you can just take it straight off. So can you see how we're going? Now, what I'm going to demonstrate what I was just talking about with these flowers. So if we want to ham up the flowers, just that bit and not the rest of it. In fact, let's try it with the black, seeing as we're doing black. Let's get the stamp again.
See how simple it is to the image come alive.
Yeah, it's really simple. And it hasn't got hardly any more on there. So let's get our platform back.
Am I right to thinking that you actually craft with quality products but very simple products?
Yes, yeah, and actually very few.
Yeah,
I don't have a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know, our multi-surface paint is really my go-to for everything. And the paper now, all we ever use is Bockingford. I'm just going to actually put a little bit on the horns as well. I think that might be quite nice. And shall we try the eyes? I mean, I've done the eyes.
No, you've done them, so
well, you get the idea
yes,
anyway.
exactly. You know.
So, now excuse my head, because when you're re-registering, you do have to go over the top, and you have to, let's move this up a bit, you have to find points when you're, so I'm looking at the points there, I might look at a point here and maybe a point there, and as long as they marry up, we should be okay. And if it's not bang on, don't worry, it won't matter. It might just be slightly off, but that's the whole point of something being handmade, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And also, is that home, but I say that, you know, but that's perfect.
So
that
that's
works
defined
perfectly.
It. Really nice. Now, if I go on that now with more colour, it's going to bleed. And I don't want it. I wanted to keep it nice and sharp, because I'm going to go back in with the pink.
Does it matter if the paper is quite still has got a lot of water, so you have to go with the heat gun for a longer time, or?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what technique you want to do. I mean, you can go wet on wet. You can go wet on dry, or dry on dry, and sort of drying finishes. It depends on what you've done. But can you see here, I've missed that, but it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's going off at a funny angle, but it just all looks part of it. Looks very sort of, I love it.
I love it too. I you know, it's one of those ones that you have such a distinctive style, and now at home you can recreate something very similar. One of the things is it looks really handmade, but intentionally made with those lines that kind of blur a little bit.
Yeah, and I sometimes think with handmade things, people worry. I mean, on our Facebook page, people post things and say, "Oh, I don't think it's very good." I think people are too critical of themselves, and they don't see their own work like other people see it. And at the end of the day, it's actually only a piece of paper, and if it really goes pear-shaped, you can start again.
Yeah.
So I want to get a bit more depth with this pink. So
I have done sometimes, like I literally have an image that is good, so then I just go guillotine it and cut and keep the half that is good, you know.
Which will go over the top of this black just to get it done more quickly.
Okay, so I have got a question from Anne, who has emailed in. As in, remember, you can email us here at the studio at hochanda.com. Any questions for Kathy or Mel, of course. Now, Anne is asking, what black ink pad would you recommend for watercolor painting so the paints don't bleed? And would you heat set the outline before watercoloring?
It's on watercolour paper or fabric?
Watercolour painting.
Watercolour painting on fabric or on paper?
Well, she hasn't said, but I would imagine it's paper.
Well, either. Right, okay. If you're doing watercolour painting like we did in the earlier show on fabric, we use the Versacraft because it's crisp. You can spritz it with water and just like this, and it can move, or you leave it to totally bleed, or let it bleed for like 5 seconds. Heat it off because it intensifies the colour. Same on here, we would use the Versacraft, or actually sometimes use the Versafine on top, and then with that, because that's solvent based. But it depends if you want to to, with say a black line, if you want it to move or not, because actually spritzing black water-soluble stamping ink can be really effective because you get greys and it can be lovely.
I personally, going with, it's like if you wanted to do it on fabric, like Kathy says, is VersaCraft black, and if not paper, probably VersaFine or VersaFine Clear. Either of those ones will work really well, as Kathy was saying.
Now, this was the Wisteria which we spritzed. It, unfortunately, it's quite a pale. It's not as deep as the Apini Purple, but you can just see the spidering that it does. And in actual, I'm going to leave that one because this is my focal point, and it's just sort of off to the side, which I like. But if you wanted to ham it up, you could do the same thing where you go over the top, again, spritz it again, or just leave this very light pale lilac. But I've gone over the top there. Now, what we can do now is we can start using our distress oxides if we want to add more shade. So I mean that's very watercolour-esque, but if I want to actually deepen it further, just stamp one of your animals and cut it out, fussy cut it out, and then with my distress oxides. Now I'm not very good at this because I haven't been doing it for very long, so
well, it doesn't, you know, I'm sure you will do it better than many people, like including myself. I'm rubbish at this technique because I'm very heavy-handed.
Yeah, me too. There's a bit of a skill to it, isn't it? But I just try and do a little bit at a time and just slowly build up. But what I'm trying to do is define the edge of that. And I don't mind if it goes onto this one because that one isn't the main one. It's the one underneath. So we'll just get some, and this is the black that I'm going to start doing a lot more black.
Now, of course, if you want to go for the individual bundles, you can, of course, the elephant being one of them. I think we have got that one and the screen, the details on the screen,
Right, I want to go quite dark here.
Okay, that's one out.
There we are.
Oh, that's
okay, that'll do there. And then what I want to do is I want to do it deeper and darker here, so I need a straight edge, Kathy. I think that's the straight edge.
Looking at your work, I kind of thinking, do you stick to a limited colour palette?
I try to, yes. And that's something that Mel has taught me because I love colour. I love bright colour, and I would put every colour going on here. And she taught me, because she's an interior designer, she's taught me to really pale it back to ideally 2. I mean, you could do 2 and then maybe one more accent colour, but generally things work better. I mean, it's like painting a room, isn't it? You know, if your colour palette is limited, it can be a little bit more successful.
Yeah, and I love that idea of having 2. I would always, I like to go 2 colours, maybe another third one, and then I'm a little bit, Mel is going to say, no, Paula, you're doing it all wrong, but then black, because black kind of, you know, suddenly adds a little bit of shade and a little bit of depth to it. But yes, kind of, but that's what you're doing here. So.
Right, I just want to put a bit of the splat on the oxide, so it's not quite so smooth, because this is quite distressed. I want the same there, so I'll just put a little bit of, I might just put a bigger dollop on it, that's better.
Now,
what we've tried to do on our stamps is provide lots of little bits that will then join everything together. So there's just things like random decorative stuff, butterflies, really simple, stylish, that you can just add to link things up. And I'm doing the black because I want to sort of join the black up down here. So that one's off the postrich. I've used the zebra this morning. Let's have a little blackbird.
And you even have a splat of paint, 2 of them.
Yes, I love that one.
Look at this. If I put it like this, you can see them. One here.
I've used that a lot, actually.
Okay, that there. There is one here, and then there is one here. So there is 2 different sizes in there. Rhinoceros. Oh, I love that. I love. It's so beautiful. Oh, look at that. The bird in there looking up. Oh, sorry, I turned it in the wrong
I've got another bird here.
And again, the dimensions of these stamps, they are larger stamps. They are perfect for your cards. They are perfect for these complete scenes. Oh, it's just...
and for journaling and that sort of thing. But also for if you want to use them for your soft furnishings. I mean, this would be great on a cushion, wouldn't it?
Yes.
If you'd done it all, and then you went in with your embroidery.
Would you use this microfibers for that?
Yeah, if anybody wants to see the real techniques of work on the microfiber, go back to our 9 o'clock show, because we went through it in detail. You know, how to do your washes and how to stamp on it, and that's more of a concise show. And then what I want to do here. Yeah.
And you still work with your ceramic tile, don't you?
I do, yeah. Now, I've got the pink here, I've got bubble wrap, and I want to start adding a little bit of texture with my bubble wrap. This is my favourite thing at the minute. I use it on quite a lot of stuff. I just love it because it's just so random, especially if some are popped, and of course you can get bigger bubble wrap, and that just links the whole thing up together.
I have got the biggest smile. I just love your artwork so much. It's just like I'm fangirling.
If you want to go in with just on like a little fine tip pen, you can do it that way if you don't want to stamp over the top. And finally, I want to put in my white. If I was sort of finishing off and just wanted to put the highlights in. So again, we can just put little bits of detail.
Catch lights in there.
On the eyes.
They're glorious. Look at that.
And the white, I think we discovered earlier on that it's a perfect partner on the website. So
the white paint.
The white, yes, it does. And again, that you can use this on fabric and it's permanent. But you don't need very much of it. I mean, the white lasts for ages.
Isn't that beautiful?
But I mean, I've only really worked up Buffalo Jill, but if you imagined that you did this all throughout, you could have a really lovely framed art of work.
And every time would be a little bit different. You know, like if you do it at home. I mean, I would start probably with an A4, so I would have just a couple of animals, maybe 3, just for that, because I would be afraid of larger paints.
Well, I think larger, you could. I quite often work on larger, and then I cut it down. I cut the best bits. It's the same with painting.
Mel, do come and join us. You're just gonna stand up, and there is no difference. Me standing up or sitting down a little bit. I just kind of, I might sit as well. You know, kind of.
Absolutely.
I'm mesmerised.
Are you? She does a fabulous job, doesn't she?
Well, you both do, because I think the best, the best ideas come when working together, two people that know what they are talking about.
Well, I think when you've got somebody to hit off, you start and think differently, don't you? You only need sort of one sentence, sometimes one word.
Sometimes a look. I just
occasionally a look.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Thank you so much, Mel.